Welcome to Ask Sean, where I explore all sorts of questions about life, relationships, and being human. I'm Sean Slevin, a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And if you have a question for me, you can submit that anonymously at asksean.org. So, obviously, I've got something on my forehead. I'm in a religious tradition that observes Ash Wednesday and the season of Lent. And I'm not going to go into, all the particulars of, why do we put ashes on our forehead and, you've got Google. There's lots of great resources for that. And that's beyond the scope of what I want to talk about. But one of the things that I've come to really appreciate about Lent, because I did not grow up with this tradition or this practice, but there's this whole communal practice of fasting together, which I'll admit, for myself initially is like, this sounds like a terrible idea. Like, why do I want to give something up for a period? But it's, it's really, gosh, what do I want to say? It was like several different thoughts colliding in my head at the same time. I've really come to appreciate it as a way in community to work on things that I want to work on anyway. So there can be different aspects to fasting. I guess I'm going to talk a little bit about how I use fasting as a way to kind of to trim the areas of my life that need trimming. So I also should clarify, I'm using fasting in a broad way here. So there's fasting in terms of from food, so like I used to have some unhealthy eating patterns. And so even though the food items themselves are not bad, I would use Lent as a way to fast from those, as a way to try to build some emotional muscles of kind of, what's going on with why do I misuse, some of these foods? Why do I overeat with some of these foods, or eat at times that's not good for me, not good for my body. But yeah, I don't generally, for myself, kind of for health reasons, I don't do like fasting from like major food things. Like I've got various body limitations and whatnot. And so I'm not able to do that. But I often will, like technology fast kind of things. That's one of the ways over the years that I have managed to healthily cut back on, kind of like some of my social media, time spending. And I still use social media in some ways. And sometimes, as I've referenced on here, there's times where I'm spending more time than I think is healthy for me. So there's always kind of a growing edge that I'm working on there. At any rate, kind of what I wanted to get to is I just thought it would be interesting to share a little bit about some of what I'm working on in this season. I've really been trying to do some trimming and some refining around kind of my beginning of day, end of day. And this is, I think I'll be working on this the rest of my life. It's always an area that needs work for me. Part of that, and part of why I wanted to share about this is just, I feel like this is a really common thing. It comes up with lots of clients. Part of it's just that we're tired, so at the beginning of the day, we're still kind of waking up. And so it's like, all of our internal resources aren't online immediately. And so we're susceptible to not making great choices. And then end of day, obviously it's end of day, we're tired, and so it's a little bit like, if like with kids, if they're up past their bedtime and then they start to melt down, right? Like they lose the ability to function well. And it's honestly similar for us as adults. Like the sort of the more grounded adult, wiser adult, self, gets more and more tired, and like maybe less healthy parts of us are like, oh, well, we're taking over. So that's why, often so many, not great things can happen, late at night, or perhaps early in the morning. So at any rate, I've got this goal and this idea for myself that I'm calling 8 to 8, which is kind of a nice you know, things don't always like, kind of line up well, uh, linguistically and numerically in that way. But this kind of sort of landed that way and resonated with me. So the idea is that from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., I'm aiming to not be on my computer at all, and to be very minimal, very selective with my phone use. Now, there's going to be times where I have to make exceptions, but I'm really going to be trying to discipline myself and like really put the burden of proof on, like, is this really an exception, or is a part of me trying to cheat? Because it's not even about like misusing anything, or not even like doing bad things online or whatever or something. It's just that I just the other night, like, I sat down to like, oh, I'm just going to look up this one thing. And then an hour later, like, I'm plugging away on a project, and the project itself is fine and good and whatnot. But I can get so caught up in like the creative process and in exploring ideas and like, oh, and I wonder about this and I wonder about that. And it's like, this is not when I need to be doing this. Like, I need to be winding down, or I want to be reading or thinking or processing. And so I'm really trying to like create space in my mornings and in my evenings. And this is really getting at, I think, part of why I wanted to talk about this in relation to Lent, and the idea of fasting, is that this is part of where using fasting in a healthy way can really work wonderfully for us, is that it's this idea of creating space. Like, I'm going to cut something out, not out of self-punishment, not out of shame, not to try to earn God's favor or to make myself worthy with other people or whatever. Because you don't have to be religious to engage in some kind of fasting process, right? Though certainly it's common in religious contexts. So it's, we're not doing this out of all those yucky reasons that can show up and have shown up in religious contexts and non-religious contexts, right? But out of a love for myself, like, I'm trying to put some fences in. I'm trying to aim for, at least, and I'm not going to do it perfectly, I'm sure, if history is any indication. But I'm going to aim for, trying to create some more space inside myself and in my kind of rhythm, that, is hopefully then some new things can emerge, in terms of knowing myself, working through some things, attending to some things that I want to be attending to in those time periods. We'll see how it goes. And my experience with this in the past is that I usually make some progress, but not perfect progress. One of the things I really appreciate about doing it during Lent is that I know there's a whole community of people that are practicing this at the same time. So there's my local, religious community. And then, with something like Lent, it's practiced all over the world. And so like thousands and thousands and thousands of people are going to be engaged in this practice. And there's something about the solidarity of that. Like, it's still hard in the moment to say no when I'm like, oh, but I just want to look up this one thing, or I just want to like program this one idea like that I had, and it'll just take a few minutes, like this famous last words with myself. Like, oh my gosh. I've had times where I have started with that, and then it's been like 1 or 2 in the morning, and it's like, what am I doing? And it's like great creativity. Like, I'm making genuine progress on something, but it's like, I freaking need to go to bed. Like, I can't, my body can't take this. And thankfully, it's very seldom that I am like that poor with my boundaries, but it has happened, and it's just, it's laughable in some ways, like, because it's just like, oh my gosh, that was not a great decision in some ways, even though I kind of didn't regret it, because it's like I did, got to do some really cool creative things, and I was very much in that inspiration mode. But it's, I don't know, this is a thing I've been thinking about, is that like, it's not just in life saying no to things that clearly aren't good for us. It's also, we need to be able to say no to good things, because a good thing at the wrong time, in some ways, it becomes not so good for us, right? Like good food, like late at night can wreck my sleep. That's not good for me. That was part of like the some of my eating issues, that I used to have in the past. So at any rate, I just wanted to offer some of these reflections, some of these in-process thoughts, and yeah, if you are if you're new to the idea of fasting, but this intrigues you, I just hope this maybe gives you some ideas about something you can kind of play with for yourself. Kind of think about, what would be your version of something that you want to practice here for the next however many weeks it is that Lent goes, and Lent goes until Easter. If you're not familiar with this religious tradition, but yeah, and in my case, often these are things that then I continue past Lent. Has tended to be the case, though not everything. I mean, sometimes there can be a fasting from something that then isn't necessarily a thing that I'm needing to change long term, but I'm engaging in the fast in that case because it's good muscle building. It's good to practice saying no, because there's going to be other things that I do need to say no to. So at any rate, trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say. I guess that's all for now. So, well, until next time, peace be with you.